The deafening power of silence echoes through eternity. In all my years of exploring human behavior and personal growth, nothing has struck me more profoundly than watching someone maintain their dignity through silence when it's not the easy path. You will know it's perhaps the hardest road we can choose to walk. But it's in that sacred space of choosing not to react that we find our greatest strength. Let me share something with you that changed everything I understood about personal power. During a heated moment in a crowded restaurant, a young server accidentally spilled water all over a man's expensive suit. The man exploded in anger, hurling insults and humiliation at this young person who was already mortified by their mistake. But what happened next was extraordinary. The server simply stood there, maintaining eye contact, breathing steadily and letting the storm of anger wash over them without resistance. No defense, no explanation, no reaction, just presence. The impact was immediate and palpable. The angry man's voice began to falter, his energy diminishing in the face of such composed dignity. The entire restaurant fell silent, witnessing this masterclass in personal power. That server, through their silence, commanded more respect in those few moments than any angry outburst ever could. You see, we've been conditioned to believe that having the last word equals winning, that defending ourselves equals strength, that immediate reaction equals self-respect. But what if everything we've been taught about handling disrespect is exactly what keeps us trapped in cycles of emotional warfare? When someone disrespects you, they're handing you an invitation to descend to their level of consciousness. They're offering you a ticket to their emotional chaos. And in that crucial moment, you have a choice that will define not just that interaction, but who you are as a person. Think about the last time someone disrespected you. Really bring that moment back into your awareness. Feel the heat rising in your chest, the tightening of your throat, the surge of words wanting to explode from your lips. That's your ego's automatic response system kicking, an MBA system designed for a world where physical threats were our primary concern. But we're no longer in that world. Our battles today are fought in the realm of consciousness, in the sphere of inner power. The truth is, responding to disrespect with more disrespect is like trying to clean mud with mud. It's attempting to find peace by creating more war. It's seeking respect by abandoning our own self-respect. Every time we react to disrespect with immediate defensive responses or counterattacks, we're actually acknowledging and validating the disrespect. We're saying your words have power over my inner state. Your actions control my reactions. But what happens when we choose silence? Not the silence of submission or fear, but the silence of conscious choice. Something miraculous begins to unfold. First, we maintain our personal power. When we don't react, we don't give away our energy. We stay centered in our own worth, which no external force can diminish unless we allow it. Second, we create a space, a powerful space where transformation can occur. In that space, the other person is forced to confront their own behavior without the distraction of our reaction. It's like holding up a mirror to their disrespect, letting them see it in its raw form without any justification or excuses that our reaction might have provided them. Every great spiritual teacher throughout history has taught that true power lies not in our ability to affect the outside world, but in our ability to maintain our inner peace, regardless of external circumstances. When you stay quiet after disrespect, you're not just practicing conflict avoidance, you're actively engaging in one of the most powerful spiritual practices available to us as human beings. But let's be crystal clear about something. This silence I'm talking about isn't weak. It isn't passive. It isn't the silence of someone who's been beaten down or who's afraid to speak up. This is the silence of a warrior. This is the silence of someone who's so secure in their own worth that they don't need to prove anything to anyone. This is the silence of true power. There's a story of a master teacher who was known for his ability to maintain peace in any situation. One day, a student asked him, "How do you maintain your calm when people insult you?" The teacher handed the student a gift. If someone offers you a gift and you don't accept it, who does the gift belong to? The teacher asked. The giver replied the student. The same is true of insults and disrespect, said the teacher. If you don't accept them, they remain with the giver. This wisdom carries a profound truth that many of us miss in our daily interactions. When someone disrespects you, they're actually telling you their story, not yours. Their disrespect is a reflection of their inner state, their struggles, their unresolved. By staying quiet, you're refusing to make their story your story. You're choosing to remain the author of your own narrative. Think about the people you most admire. The ones who command genuine respect, not fear. The ones whose presence fills a room without them saying a word. What do they all have in common? It's their ability to maintain their composure under pressure. Their ability to respond rather than react. Their understanding that true power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply is. As we sit here together, I want you to really feel the weight of this truth. Every time you choose silence over reactive response, you're not just handling a single incident, you're actually rewiring your brain. You're building new neural pathways that lead to greater emotional intelligence, better relationships, and more authentic personal power. When you stay quiet after disrespect, you're making a profound statement about who you are and what you stand for. You're declaring that your peace is more valuable than your need to be right. You're demonstrating that your self-worth is non-negotiable and doesn't depend on external validation or victory in verbal combat. But let's address the elephant in the room. The real reason why staying quiet feels so difficult. We've been programmed to believe that silence equals weakness, that if we don't defend ourselves immediately and forcefully, we're somehow letting ourselves be diminished. This programming runs deep in our collective consciousness, but it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of what true strength looks like. Remember those moments when anger coursed through your veins? When your heart raced with the need to respond, to fight back, to prove yourself right? In those moments, you probably felt strong. You probably felt powerful. But was that real power, or was it just the adrenaline of ego masquerading as strength? Real power, the kind that transforms lives and commands genuine respect, is quiet. It doesn't need to prove itself. It doesn't need to win arguments. It doesn't need the last word. Real power rests in knowing who you are so deeply that nothing anyone says or does can shake that knowledge. There's a profound difference between staying quiet because you're afraid and staying quiet because you're strong. Fear-based silence comes from a place of lack of courage, lack of self-worth, lack of personal power. But conscious silence, the kind we're talking about here, comes from a place of abundance. Abundance of self-awareness, abundance of inner security, abundance of true power. When someone disrespects you and you choose conscious silence, you're not surrendering your power. You're wielding it with masterful precision. You're choosing to direct your energy toward what truly matters rather than wasting it on reactive behavior that ultimately diminishes you. Think about water for a moment. When you try to grab it, it slips through your fingers. When you try to punch it, your fist goes right through it. When you try to fight it, you exhaust yourself while the water remains unchanged. Yet water, in its quiet persistence, can carve through mountains and shape continents. That's the kind of power we access when we choose conscious silence in the face of disrespect. The next time someone disrespects you, I want you to try something different. Instead of immediately responding, take a deep breath and observe what's happening inside you. Feel the initial surge of emotion, the hurt, the anger, the indignation. Don't try to suppress these feelings, but don't let them drive your behavior either. Just observe them with curiosity and compassion. As you maintain this conscious silence, notice how the other person's energy shifts. Watch how your non-reaction creates a space that their disrespect cannot fill. Observe how their words, when met with dignified silence, often reveal more about their own inner state than anything about you. This practice isn't about becoming a doormat or suppressing your truth. It's about choosing the timing and manner of your response from a place of wisdom rather than reaction. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Other times you might choose to address the disrespect later when emotions have cooled and genuine communication becomes possible. The real transformation happens not in the external situation, but in your internal landscape. Each time You choose conscious silence over reactive response. You're strengthening your emotional muscles. You're developing what I call responsibility, the ability to choose your response rather than being driven by automatic reactions. Every instance of disrespect you encounter is actually a gift, an opportunity to practice this profound art of conscious silence. Each challenging interaction becomes your teacher, helping you develop greater emotional mastery and deeper self-awareness. When you stay quiet after disrespect, you're doing something revolutionary. You're breaking the cycle of emotional reactivity that perpetuates conflict in our world. You're choosing to be a force for peace rather than adding to the chaos. You're demonstrating a level of emotional evolution that can inspire others to examine their own reactive patterns. But this path requires courage, perhaps more courage than speaking up or fighting back. It requires the courage to stand in your truth even when others misunderstand your silence. It requires the courage to trust that your worth isn't diminished by someone else's behavior. It requires the courage to choose peace over the temporary satisfaction of retaliation. As you develop this practice, you'll begin to notice something remarkable. The quality of your relationships will shift. People will begin to treat you differently, not because you've demanded respect through words or actions, but because you've demonstrated it through your silence becomes a teacher, showing others a higher way of being. You'll also notice changes in your own inner world. The old triggers that once sent you into reactive spirals will begin to lose their power. You'll find yourself responding to life's challenges with greater wisdom and less drama. You'll discover a kind of peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. A peace that flows from knowing who you are and standing firmly in that knowledge. This journey of mastering conscious silence isn't a straight path. There will be times when you react before you remember to respond. There will be moments when the old patterns resurface and you find yourself caught in the trap of reactive behavior. When this happens, be gentle with yourself. Remember that this is a practice, not a performance. Each failure is actually a stepping stone toward greater mastery. The true test of this practice comes in those everyday moments when disrespect shows up in subtle forms. It's not always about dramatic confrontations or obvious insults. Sometimes it's the small dismissals, the subtle put down, the casual disregard for our feelings or boundaries that test our commitment to conscious silence. A colleague takes credit for your work in a meeting. A family member makes a backhanded compliment at a gathering. A friend consistently dismisses these moments, these small paper cuts to our dignity, often trigger our deepest reactive patterns because they touch our core wounds, our fears of being unseen, unvalued, or unworthy. But here's what's fascinating about these moments. They offer us the most fertile ground for growth. When we can maintain our conscious silence in these everyday challenges, we're not just practicing emotional mastery. We're actually rewiring our entire relationship with respect and self-worth. You see, most of us have been operating under a fundamental misconception. We believe that respect is something we need to earn from others, something we need to demand or defend. But true respect, the kind that matters, flows from within. When you truly respect yourself, when you're anchored in your own worth, other people's disrespect becomes what it really is, a reflection of their own inner state, their own struggles, their own pain. The most profound shift happens when you realize that staying quiet after disrespect isn't about the other person at all. It's about honoring your own inner peace, your own emotional sovereignty. It's about choosing not to let someone else's behavior dictate your state of being. Think about the energy you spent throughout your life defending yourself against disrespect. The mental rehearsals of arguments, the sleepless nights, replaying situations and crafting perfect responses, the emotional energy drained by carrying resentment. Now imagine channeling all that energy into your own growth, your own peace, your own evolution. There's a certain kind of freedom that comes with this realization. When you no longer feel compelled to defend yourself against every slight, when you can let disrespect pass through you without leaving a mark, you experience a level of liberation that few people ever know. You're no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior or opinions. You're no longer imprisoned by the need to prove your worth, but this freedom comes with responsibility. As you develop this practice of conscious silence, you'll find yourself becoming more aware of how you treat others. You'll catch yourself in moments when you might be the source of disrespect, often unconsciously. This awareness is a gift. It allows you to break the cycle, not just in how you respond to disrespect, but in how you interact with others. Consider how many conflicts in your life started with a simple moment of disrespect that escalated into something much larger, because both parties felt compelled to react, to defend, to prove themselves right. Now imagine if just one person in that dynamic had chosen conscious silence. Imagine if just one person had refused to fuel the fire of conflict. This is how change happens, not through grand gestures or dramatic confrontations, but through individual choices to respond differently in everyday moments. When you choose conscious silence in the face of disrespect, you're not just changing your own experience. You're contributing to a shift in collective consciousness. The practice becomes particularly powerful in close relationships, with family members who know exactly which buttons to push, with long-term partners who can trigger our deepest insecurities, with colleagues who challenge our professional worth. These relationships often present the greatest opportunities for practicing conscious silence because they touch our most sensitive spots. But here's what's beautiful about practicing in these close relationships. The impact is immediate and profound. When you respond to a family member's criticism with conscious silence instead of defensive reaction, you create space for a new kind of interaction. When you meet a partner's momentary disrespect with centered presence, rather than emotional reactivity, you open the door to deeper understanding. This doesn't mean you never address issues or express your feelings. Rather, it means you choose the timing and manner of that expression from a place of wisdom rather than a reaction. You might later say, when you said that, it felt disrespectful to me. But you say it, not from a place of anger or hurt, but from a place of clear seeing and genuine desire for understanding. The power of this practice lies in its simplicity. It doesn't require special techniques or complicated strategies. It doesn't demand years of meditation or spiritual study. It simply asks us to pause, to breathe, to choose peace over reaction. Yet in that simple choice lies the seed of profound transformation. As you develop this practice, you'll begin to notice subtle shifts in your energy field. You'll find yourself becoming less reactive in all areas of life, not just in response to disrespect. You'll discover a kind of inner stability that remains steady even when external circumstances are challenging. You'll experience what it truly means to be the eye of the storm, calm, centered, and unshakable even when chaos swirls around you. The real beauty of conscious silence emerges when we understand its ripple effects. Each time you choose not to react to disrespect, you're teaching without words. You're demonstrating a higher way of being that can transform not just the immediate interaction, but the entire field of relationships around you. Let me share something profound that occurs when you master this practice. You'll begin to notice that the people who once triggered your strongest reactions start to show up differently, not because they've changed, though that often happens too, but because your relationship to their behavior has fundamentally shifted. What once felt like personal attacks begin to look more like calls for help, expressions of pain or manifestations. This shifted perception doesn't make the disrespect acceptable, but it makes your response more purposeful. Your silence becomes not just a shield, but a bridge to understanding, a bridge to compassion, a bridge to genuine connection. This is where the practice transcends personal development and becomes a force for healing in our world. Think about the emotional inheritance we all carry. The patterns of reaction and counter-reaction that have been passed down through generations, the ways we learn to defend ourselves, to fight back, to prove our worth through conflict. When you choose conscious silence, you're not just changing your own pattern. You're helping to break a chain of reactive behavior that might have persisted for generations. This is particularly powerful in the context of family dynamics. When you can stay quiet in the face of a parent's criticism, a sibling's judgment, or a child's defiance, You're creating space for new patterns to emerge. You're showing those closest to you that there's another way to handle conflict, another way to process emotions, another way to maintain dignity. But let's be brutally honest about something. This practice will challenge you to your core. There will be moments when every fiber of your being screams to react, to defend, to fight back. These are the moments when the practice becomes most powerful, when your commitment to conscious silence is tested in the fire of real-life challenges. In these moments, remember that you're not just practicing for yourself. You're practicing for everyone who's watching and learning from your example. You're practicing for those who haven't yet discovered their own inner strength. You're practicing for a world that desperately needs models of conscious response. The practice becomes especially powerful in professional settings. In the workplace, where power dynamics and ego investments often create fertile ground for disrespect, your conscious silence can become a game changer. When you can stay centered and quiet in the face of a colleague's dismissive comment or a superior's condescension, you demonstrate a kind of leadership that transcends hierarchical position. But here's what's crucial to understand. This practice isn't about becoming passive or accepting mistreatment. It's about choosing your responses from a place of wisdom rather than reaction. Sometimes after the initial moment of disrespect has passed and you've maintained your conscious silence, you might choose to address the situation directly. The difference is that your response comes from a place of clarity rather than emotional triggers. As you deepen in this practice, you'll discover that it affects every aspect of your life. Your relationships become more authentic because you're no longer caught in cycles of reaction and defense. Your work becomes more effective because you're operating from a place of centered presence rather than emotional volatility. Your health often improves because you're carrying less stress and emotional tension. The practice also develops a kind of emotional intelligence that goes beyond conventional understanding. You begin to read situations more clearly because you're not clouded by reactive emotions. You start to understand people more deeply because you're able to see beyond their behavioral surface to the underlying needs and fears that drive their actions. This emotional clarity becomes particularly valuable in complex situations where multiple people are involved. In group dynamics, your conscious silence can serve as an anchor, a point of stability that helps others find their own center. Without saying a word, you demonstrate the possibility of remaining peaceful amidst chaos. There's a profound paradox at the heart of this practice. The more you develop your capacity for conscious silence, the more effectively you can speak when you choose to. Your words carry more weight because they come from a place of genuine choice rather than reactive necessity. Your communication becomes clearer because it's not clouded by defensive energy. This is where the practice begins to transform not just how you handle disrespect, but how you show up in every interaction. You find yourself speaking with more intention, listening with more presence, responding with more wisdom. Your relationships naturally deepen because people sense that they can be real with you, that you won't collapse in the face of their truth or explode in the face of their struggles. The most beautiful aspect of this practice emerges when you realize that staying quiet after disrespect isn't just a personal coping strategy. It's a revolutionary act of consciousness. In a world that celebrates quick comebacks and verbal sparring, choosing conscious silence is choosing to evolve beyond the old paradigm of conflict and reaction. Every time you maintain your peace in the face of disrespect, you're casting a vote for a different kind of world. A world where strength is measured not by how loudly we can shout, but by how steadily we can stand in our truth. A world where power is expressed not through domination, but through the ability to maintain inner peace regardless of external circumstances. This practice becomes particularly powerful when we understand its role in breaking cycles of negativity. Think about how often one moment of disrespect leads to another, creating a chain reaction that can poison relationships, workplaces, and entire communities. Your conscious silence becomes a circuit breaker in this chain, interrupting patterns that might have persisted for years or even generations. As you deepen in this practice, you'll begin to notice subtle shifts in how people relate to you. Those who once felt compelled to assert themselves through disrespect may find themselves naturally moderating their behavior in your presence. Not because you've demanded it, but because your quiet strength creates a field of dignity that influences everyone around you. The practice reveals its deepest wisdom when we understand that staying quiet after disrespect isn't about the other person at all. It's about our relationship with our own inner truth. Each time you choose conscious silence, you're making a profound statement about who you are and what you value. You're declaring your independence from the need for external validation or victory. But let's be clear about something crucial. This journey isn't about reaching a destination where you never feel hurt or triggered by disrespect. It's about developing the capacity to hold those feelings in awareness without letting them dictate your response. It's about creating space between stimulus and response, between what happens to you and what you do with what happens to you. The practice becomes most powerful when we realize that each instance of disrespect is actually offering us a gift, the gift of choice. In that moment between receiving disrespect and choosing our response lies the entire universe of possibility. Will we react from our conditioning, or will we respond from our consciousness? Will we add to the world's pain, or will we demonstrate the possibility of peace? Think of yourself as a guardian of peace, not just your own peace, but the peace of the entire field of relationships around you. When you choose conscious silence in the face of disrespect, you're not just protecting your own inner state. You're creating a sanctuary of dignity that others can step into when they're ready. This practice isn't just about personal growth. It's about participating in the evolution of human consciousness. Every time you choose not to react to disrespect, you're helping to elevate the collective field of human interaction. You're demonstrating that there's another way to handle conflict, another way to process emotions, another way to maintain dignity. The deepest truth about staying quiet after disrespect is that it's ultimately an act of love. Love for yourself, love for the other person, love for the possibility of human evolution. It's choosing to see beyond the surface behavior to the shared humanity beneath. It's recognizing that everyone is doing the best they can from their current level of consciousness. As you leave here today, carry with you this understanding. Your conscious silence in the face of disrespect is not a sign of weakness, but a demonstration of the highest form of strength. It's not an act of submission, but an expression of, it's not about what you're against, but what you're for. Peace, dignity, and the evolution of human consciousness. Remember that this practice isn't about perfection. It's about progression. There will be times when you react before you remember to respond. There will be moments when old patterns resurface. When this happens, treat yourself with the same compassion you're learning to extend to others. Each failure is actually a stepping stone toward greater mastery. The world needs your conscious silence now more than ever. In an age of increasing polarization and reactivity, your choice to maintain peace in the face of disrespect becomes a beacon of possibility. You demonstrate through your being that there is another way, a way of peace, a way of dignity, a way of conscious response rather than unconscious reaction. Let your silence speak volumes about who you are and what you stand for. Let your peace be your power. Let your dignity be your defense. And most importantly, let your conscious choice to stay quiet after disrespect be your contribution to the evolution of human consciousness. As you integrate this practice into your life, remember that each moment of conscious silence is a seed planted in the garden of human potential. Some of these seeds will sprout immediately, transforming tense situations into opportunities for understanding. Others may lie dormant for years before flowering in ways you could never have predicted. You're not just practicing for yourself, you're practicing for all those who will be touched by your example. Your conscious silence creates ripples of possibility that extend far beyond your immediate experience. You are helping to create a world where strength is measured, not by the ability to dominate, but by the capacity to maintain peace in the face of provocation. Go forth with this understanding. Let your practice of conscious silence be your gift to a world in need of peace. Let your example inspire others to discover their own inner strength. And let your commitment to staying quiet after disrespect be your contribution to the healing and evolution of human consciousness.